Every alien armada fell until one human warship stood unbroken. FY sci-fi story. Before we dive into this epic tale, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. The first wave hit Kepler Station like a storm of molten glass. 18 alien warships materialized from hyperspace, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight into deadly prisms. The Zephyrian Collective had arrived, and they brought silence with them. "Contact confirmed," Lieutenant Sarah Chen called from the sensor array, her voice tight. "Multiple signatures. Unknown configuration. They're beautiful." Commander Elena Vasquez stepped to the main display, watching the elegant ships arrange themselves in perfect geometric formations. Each vessel looked like a cathedral carved from living diamond, pulsing with inner light. "Beautiful things kill you fastest out here," she muttered. The Zephyrians didn't negotiate. They didn't demand surrender. They simply began harvesting. Streams of coherent energy lanced out from their ships, not to destroy but to extract. Kepler Station's outer hull began to dissolve, its metal content flowing toward the alien vessels like liquid mercury answering a magnet's call. "They're eating us," Chen whispered. Within minutes, 3 human defense frigates were reduced to skeletal frameworks. Their crews didn't die in explosions. They simply found themselves floating in space as their ships were consumed around them. The evacuation lasted 6 hours. The Zephyrians worked with surgical precision, taking what they needed and leaving the rest to drift. No shots fired, no warnings given, just methodical, elegant consumption. When the harvest was complete, they vanished as suddenly as they'd arrived. At Luna Command, Admiral Marcus Reeves stared at the after-action reports with growing unease. This was the 7th attack in 2 months, and each one followed the same pattern. "The hegemony lasted 3 days, reported Colonel Janet Torres, scrolling through her tactical pad. 600 ships, full battle formation. The Vex simply absorbed them. Hull material, weapon systems, even the crew's water rations. Everything with useful molecular structure. The Altarian Republic? 4 hours. The Crystalline Confederation took their entire fleet apart like a puzzle, piece by piece. No survivors, no wreckage. Just empty space where 1,000 warships used to be." Reeves rubbed his temples. Humanity had watched 17 galactic powers fall to different alien species in the past year. Each attacker was unique. Energy beings, hive minds, reality manipulators. But the result was always the same. Total consumption. "What about the Proxima Alliance?" Torres's face darkened. "The Devourers arrived yesterday. 12 bioships, each one the size of a dreadnought. They didn't harvest technology. They harvested life itself. Turned every living thing in the system into raw biomass for reproduction. The pattern was clear. The galaxy was being carved up by species so advanced that conventional warfare was meaningless. They didn't conquer. They consumed. And now Earth was next. "Sir," a young ensign approached hesitantly. "Long-range sensors are picking up multiple hyperspace signatures. They're heading for the Sol system." Reeves closed his eyes. "How many fleets?" "All of them, sir. The Zephyrians, the Vex, the Crystalline Confederation, the Devourers, and 7 other species we haven't identified yet. Estimated arrival, 36 hours." The room fell silent. Humanity's entire fleet consisted of 230 ships, most of them outdated patrol vessels. Against the combined might of 11 apex predator species, they wouldn't last 30 minutes. "There is one option," Torres said quietly. Every head turned toward her. "The Indomitable." Deep in the Luna shipyards, hidden in a construction bay that officially didn't exist, the UES Indomitable waited in darkness. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck, staring at the ship that had consumed 5 years of his life. She was ugly by any aesthetic standard, a brutal wedge of black metal and angular geometry, built not for beauty, but for one purpose: to never break. "She's not fast," said Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez, joining him at the viewport. "She's not elegant. Hell, she's barely space-worthy by normal standards. But But she's the most stubborn piece of metal ever assembled. Every system has 7 backups. Every critical component is wrapped in 3 layers of redundant shielding. The hull is so dense it bends space-time around itself. Morrison nodded. The Indomitable was humanity's answer to a question they hoped they'd never have to ask. What do you build when surrender isn't an option and victory is impossible? You build something that refuses to die. How's the crew? Martinez grimaced. 140 volunteers. Most of them have lost entire families to the alien harvests. They're not here to win, Captain. They're here to make a statement. What kind of statement? That humans don't break, no matter what. The combined alien armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a plague of stars. 11 fleets, each one capable of ending civilizations, arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around Earth's solar system. The Zephyrians took the North Quadrant, their crystal ships catching and refracting sunlight into rainbow patterns. The Vex claimed the South, their biomechanical vessels pulsing with stolen technologies from 100 dead worlds. The Devourers spread across the eastern approach, living ships that breathed and bled and hungered. Between them, species humanity had never seen. The Null Architects, beings of living shadow, who built with darkness itself. The Probability Weavers, who existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The Echo Swarm, machines that replicated by consuming space-time. Admiral Reeves stood in Luna Command's observation dome, watching humanity's death sentence arrange itself across the sky. Fleet status? He asked quietly. 230 ships in defensive formation around Earth, Torres reported. Weapons hot, shields raised. They're ready, sir. They're dead, Reeves corrected. But they're ready. A new voice cut through the comm channel. Morrison's, broadcasting from the Indomitable's bridge. Luna Command, this is Captain Morrison. The Indomitable is moving to intercept. On the tactical display, a single contact separated from Earth's defensive perimeter and accelerated toward the alien sphere. One ship against thousands. Jake, Reeves said over a private channel, you know this is suicide. No, sir, Morrison replied, his voice steady. This is endurance. The Indomitable crossed the outer system at full burn, her massive engines leaving a trail of ionized particles that gleamed against the black. She wasn't trying to hide. Stealth was impossible against enemies who could perceive quantum fluctuations. Instead, she announced herself. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Indomitable. He broadcast on all frequencies, in every language known to galactic civilization. I'm heading to the center of your formation. If you want to stop me, you're welcome to try. The response was immediate. The Zephyrian struck first, coherent energy beams that could dissolve a mountain hitting the Indomitable's hull. The energy splashed off her armor like water off a rock. The Vex followed, launching hunter-killer drones that burrowed into enemy hulls and consumed them from within. They struck the Indomitable's surface and simply stopped. Her armor was too dense, too layered, too stubborn to penetrate. The Devourers unleashed their bioplague, microscopic organisms that could convert any organic matter into more of themselves. The plague struck the ship's hull and died instantly. The Indomitable's surface had been treated with compounds so toxic that life itself recoiled from them. Shields holding at 98%, reported Tactical Officer Kim Park. Hull integrity unchanged. They're not even scratching the paint. Morrison allowed himself a thin smile. They've never met anything they couldn't consume. Keep us on course. The alien fleets began to converge. Thousands of ships moving toward the single human vessel like antibodies responding to an infection. They hammered the Indomitable with everything they had. Reality-warping weapons, dimension-cutting beams, attacks that existed in theoretical mathematics rather than physical space. The ship shuddered but held. Her hull glowed cherry red from energy impacts, but the armor held. Her shields fluctuated wildly, but the generators kept running. Warning lights flashed across every console, but no system failed. They're adapting, Martinez called from engineering. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. They're learning how to hurt us. How long can we hold? Forever, Captain. That's what we built her for. The Indomitable pushed deeper into the alien formation, accepting punishment that would have vaporized any other ship. Around her, the various fleets began to coordinate their attacks. Alien species that had never worked together, combining their technologies in desperate attempts to stop the human ship. Nothing worked. The probability weavers tried to erase the Indomitable from 17 different timelines simultaneously. The ship existed anyway, too stubborn to be unmade. The Null Architects wrapped the vessel in absolute darkness, trying to cut it off from the universe itself. The Indomitable's navigation system simply switched to internal references and kept flying. The Echo Swarm attempted to replicate the ship's technology, creating dozens of mirror image vessels to confuse targeting systems. But there was only one Indomitable, and she couldn't be copied. Her very existence was an act of defiance that couldn't be replicated by machines. Hours passed, then days. The alien fleets threw everything at the single human ship, weapons that had ended civilizations, technologies that bent the laws of physics. The Indomitable absorbed it all, her black hull now glowing like a star from the accumulated energy of 1,000 alien weapons. But she didn't stop. She didn't slow. She didn't break. On Earth, civilian populations watched through long-range telescopes as their last ship fought alone against impossible odds. No one spoke of victory. Victory wasn't the point. They watched something more precious. The moment when a species decided that some things were worth more than survival. "Captain," Chen reported from sensors, "I'm reading massive energy buildups across all enemy fleets. They're preparing some kind of coordinated attack." Morrison nodded. They'd push the aliens to their limit. Whatever came next would either destroy the Indomitable or prove that some things in the universe were truly unbreakable. "All hands, brace for impact," he announced shipwide. "Remember what we came here to do." The combined alien fleets fired as one. 11 different species, dozens of exotic technologies, hundreds of weapons that existed at the very edge of known physics, all focused on a single human ship. The Indomitable vanished in a sphere of pure energy. For 37 seconds, the space where the human ship had been was nothing but roiling plasma and twisted space-time. Sensors couldn't penetrate the chaos. Even the aliens seemed to hold their collective breath. Then the energy dissipated. The Indomitable hung in space, her hull now white-hot in streaming vaporized metal. Entire sections of her armor had been melted away, revealing the layered redundancies beneath. Warning lights bathed her bridge in emergency red. But she was still there, still intact, still moving forward. "Damage report," Morrison called, his voice steady despite the smoke filling the bridge. "Hull integrity at 43%, Martinez reported, her console sparking. "Primary shields offline, secondary shields fluctuating. We've lost decks 7 through 12 to structural collapse." "Weapons? What weapons?" Park laughed bitterly. "We fired our entire arsenal in the first hour. We're not here to fight back, remember?" Morrison looked around his damaged bridge, at his crew of volunteers who had signed up for certain death. They were all still at their posts, still doing their jobs, still refusing to give up. "Then we do what we came here to do," he said quietly. "We endure." The alien fleets hung in space around the battered human ship, seemingly paralyzed by indecision. They had used their most powerful weapons, their most exotic technologies, their most devastating attacks. The human vessel should have been dust. Instead, it continued its slow, stubborn approach toward the center of their formation. On the Zephyrian flagship, crystalline beings of pure thought debated in frequencies beyond human hearing. They had harvested the metal of 1,000 worlds, absorbed the knowledge of countless civilizations, but they had never encountered anything they couldn't consume. The human ship was impossible. It violated every principle of warfare they understood. Aboard the Vex command vessel, a hive mind of mechanical consciousness ran calculations at quantum speeds. Every scenario ended with the human ship's destruction, yet it remained. The variables didn't compute. The equation was broken. In the Devourer bioships, ancient hungers stirred uneasily. They had consumed the life force of entire star systems, turned living worlds into nurseries for their offspring. But the human vessel radiated something they couldn't digest. Pure, distilled stubbornness. "Sir," Chen reported from her damaged sensor station, "I'm picking up communications between the alien fleets. They're confused." Morrison allowed himself a bitter smile. They've never met anything that wouldn't break. It's outside their experience. "What happens now?" Before Morrison could answer, a new voice cut across all communication channels. It was artificial, synthesized from the combined languages of the alien fleets, translated into perfect English. "Human vessel, we do not understand your purpose. You cannot defeat us. You cannot escape us. Why do you continue?" Morrison looked around his bridge, at Martinez nursing burns from a console explosion, at Park trying to restart her destroyed tactical systems, at Chen working with a sensor array held together by spare wire and determination. "Because," he said into the comm, "that's what humans do." The standoff continued for 6 days. The Indomitable drifted at the center of the alien formation, her engines finally silent, her hull cooling from white-hot to cherry red to black. Most of her systems had failed. Life support was running on backup power. The crew survived on emergency rations and recycled air. But she was still there. The alien fleets maintained their positions, weapons powered but not firing. They had tried everything: direct assault, exotic physics, reality manipulation. Nothing worked. The human ships simply refused to die. On Earth, the waiting became a prayer. Across human space, what remained of the fleet held position, watching their last ship make a statement they didn't fully understand, but felt in their bones. "Captain," Martinez said weakly, floating near her engineering station in the zero gravity of their powerless ship, "I've got good news and bad news. Bad news first. We're dying. Not from enemy action, from simple system failure. We've pushed everything past its limits. We've got maybe 2 days of life support left." Morrison nodded. They'd known this was a one-way trip. "Good news?" Martinez smiled, her face streaked with coolant and blood. "We're not broken. Dying maybe, but not broken." It was then that the impossible happened. The first ship to withdraw was from the Echo Swarm, a machine intelligence that had replicated across half the galaxy, suddenly powered down its weapons and jumped out of the system. No explanation, no communication. Just departure. The probability weavers followed, their reality-bending vessels folding back into dimensions human science couldn't name. One by one, the alien fleets began to disengage. Not in retreat, there was no fear in their movements. It was something else. Something like respect. "What's happening?" Park whispered from her damaged console. Morrison watched as species that had ended civilizations powered down their weapons and pulled back from the dying human ship. He thought he understood. "They came here to harvest," he said quietly, "to take what they needed and move on. But we're showing them something they've never seen before." "What's that?" "Something that can't be taken." The Zephyrians were the last to leave. Their crystal flagship drifted close to the Indomitable. Close enough that Morrison could see the elegant geometries of its construction, the way starlight bent through its translucent hull. A message came through on the comm, the crystalline voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We take what we need to survive. You give what you must to endure. We do not understand this, but we acknowledge it." Then they too were gone, jumping into hyperspace and leaving the Sol system empty, except for one battered human ship and the world she had died to protect. The rescue ships found the Indomitable 3 days later, drifting dead in space but intact. Her crew was alive, barely, survived by emergency systems and the sheer stubborn refusal to give up that had defined their mission. Morrison was unconscious when they brought him aboard the hospital ship, his body pushed beyond its limits by radiation and system failures. But he woke to something he hadn't expected to see again. Earth, blue and green and unharmed, hanging in the viewport beside his medical bed. Admiral Reeves was waiting for him. "The aliens?" Morrison asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Gone. All of them. No explanation, no demands, no threats. They just Left. Reeves leaned forward. What did you do out there, Jake? Morrison thought about it for a long moment, remembering the feel of his ship shuddering under his impossible weapons, the sight of his crew refusing to abandon their posts even as everything around them failed. We showed them something they'd never seen before, he said finally, something that couldn't be harvested or consumed or broken down into useful components. What's that? Morrison smiled, thinking of the Indomitable now being towed back to Luna shipyards, her hull scarred but unbroken, her mission complete. The human spirit. Turns out it's the one resource in the galaxy that can't be taken by force. 6 months later, the Indomitable sat in space dock, fully repaired and ready for service. Her black hull had been polished to a mirror finish, her battle scars carefully preserved as a reminder of the day she stood alone against the galaxy's apex predators. Morrison stood on the observation deck, watching technicians make final preparations. The ship looked the same, ugly, angular, built for endurance rather than elegance. But now she carried something more. The knowledge that sometimes survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. Sometimes survival was about being too stubborn to quit. Behind him, Martinez approached with a datapad. New orders from Earth Command, she said. They want to build 12 more ships based on the Indomitable's design. They're calling it the Endurance class. Morrison nodded. Good. The aliens had left, but they might return, and when they did, they'd find not just one ship that refused to break, but a whole fleet of them. Any word from the other species? The ones that withdrew? Long-range sensors have been tracking their movements. They're avoiding human space entirely. Some are pulling back from their expansion into other systems too. It's like... She paused, searching for the right words. Like they learned something they didn't expect to learn, Morrison finished. Below them, the Indomitable's new crew was boarding, volunteers all, drawn by the story of a ship that had faced impossible odds and simply refused to die. They walked with the quiet confidence of people who understood that victory wasn't always about winning. Sometimes it was about not losing. Morrison looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy where apex predators roamed, and civilizations fell like wheat before the harvest. But now, somewhere out there, alien intelligences that had never been denied anything they wanted were learning to avoid a small yellow star in the stubborn, impossible species that called it home. The human spirit, it turned out, was more dangerous than any weapon, not because it could destroy, but because it absolutely refused to be destroyed. And in a galaxy full of predators, sometimes the most terrifying thing you could encounter was prey that wouldn't run. The end. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this epic tale of human endurance. What did you think of Captain Morrison and the crew of the Indomitable? Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind, or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important. And I've chosen another incredible HFY story for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist of humanity's greatest moments among the stars. See you there.